Hi guys. So a really common misconception I come across is this idea that empathy is something you're either born with or not, particularly when it comes to relationships and when it comes to corporate settings. Now the thing is, empathy, yes, is very much about emotions. However, there's a lot of thinking involved, there's a lot of cognitive processing involved, and it is something that you have to do in a purposeful way. And as a result, it is a skill that can be developed by anybody, no matter how poor you feel you are at the emotional side of things. And ultimately, empathy is one of the greatest ways of becoming more in touch with yourself, more in touch with other people, more aware of the world around you. It is also fantastic for leading teams, for building strong, meaningful relationships. I mean, there's so many benefits to it. So it's really something that you should work on. Now, that being said, if you're not in touch with your own emotional experience, then you're going to really struggle developing empathy. So that would be your starting point. It's basically getting in touch with your own emotions. And I've done several videos on this on my YouTube channel, so go check them out. But basically, just to sum it up, it's about being able to recognize your emotions, being able to sit with them, being able to regulate them so they don't overwhelm you, and being able to process them and release them. And also being very aware of the impact that they have on your thoughts and on your behaviors, and being very mindful as to whether or not these thoughts and behaviors are going to be helpful. So, in other words, creating a continuous awareness of the self, of your feelings, and the impact that it has on your thoughts and behaviors. And once you have developed the skill, you can then move on to practicing empathy. Now, empathy is basically being able to understand what somebody means when they talk, as opposed to just focusing on what they say, to be able to feel what it is that they're feeling. And there's a few different types of empathy. There is cognitive empathy, which is, I suppose, kind of just being able to mentally put yourself in another person's shoes, to be able to see their perspective but not feel a whole lot with it. Then there's emotional empathy, and that's basically being washed with the same feeling as the other person. So you can nearly become a little bit overwhelmed with this type of empathy. And then there's compassionate empathy, and this is the one that you want to focus on. So it's been able to experience another person's feeling, yet still being objective enough to be practical and to put some thought to it and to put some action into place if necessary, so that you're not completely drowned in another person's experience, but you are feeling it with them. And as I said, that sounds complex, but it's actually not as difficult as you may think once you start to practice it. So what are the things that you can do? Well, first of all, practice being really present with people when you have conversations. I mean, focus on what it is that they're saying. Oftentimes we're so busy thinking of what our response is going to be, or thinking of a similar story or a shared experience that we have that we want to tell them all about, that we don't actually hear what they're saying. So it's about active listening, and be very observant as well of their body language, of non-verbal cues. If somebody looks like they're experiencing a sense of shame, or like they're about to burst into tears, or if they're very closed off and defensive, I mean, this is a really strong message that they're struggling, and that they're not really comfortable in sharing this information with you. And that means, you have to be really lenient and gentle with them. They don't want you marching in there giving them solutions to everything. They just want you to sit with them, to hear them, to understand them, and to be in the experience with them. I think oftentimes as well, just because of the whole kind of positivity movement, we feel like we have to put a bright perspective on everything, and it's like, oh, things will be better, and before you know it, or well, at least you're not X, Y, or Z. And that's so unhelpful. I mean, it's very invalidating, and it doesn't help the person work through the experience that they're trying to work through. Beware as well of your biases and your tendency to judge. And you may think, nah, I'm not judgmental. But the reality is we all are, and we all have these cognitive biases that make assumptions for us, particularly when we're in an emotionally charged experience. And oftentimes they can cause us to be quite judgmental, or quite critical of somebody else's experience. And that's not what somebody is looking for. They're basically looking for you to be open-minded and and to be open-hearted. Get curious. Get curious about the other person. Get curious about the world around you. Get curious about yourself. I mean, literally, we are so, I suppose, distracted by our phones and screens and you know, all of the time, that we don't actually practice curiosity. And curiosity is the key to building better relationships. I mean, getting to know our partners, getting to know our children, getting to know the world around us is so important. And it's something that we don't pay an awful lot of attention to. Speaking of attention, pay attention to the person that you're talking to. As I said, really hear them. That active listening element is so important, and it's something that we're not always that very good at. Ask really good questions. I mean, you know, oftentimes if you want to find out more, if you want to make somebody feel safe in sharing more, then, you know, you need to ask the right questions as opposed to just nodding your head and sitting there. So try to come up with something that I suppose shows your interest, that makes them feel like you're actually hearing what they're saying and that you care about the outcome. Try not to come up with a whole list of solutions straight away. You know, first of all, they want you to sit with the feelings with them, and then you can move on to, okay, so where do we go from here, you know? And be very wary of your own emotions as well. I mean, oftentimes our triggers are brought up when somebody else is sharing with us, and it can bring up this whole emotional reaction in us, which, you know, can kind of really take the wind out of us. So make sure that you safeguard yourself, that you look after yourself, and that you're very self-aware throughout the entire process. If empathy is something that you would like to work on, or if you feel that you have an issue that you would like to work through, be it mental health, be it relationship issue, get in touch with me on the website. It's fundamentals.ie. You will also catch me on my Facebook and my Instagram. Those pages are called Fundamentals, and I do regular content on my YouTube channel, which is called Fiona Feely. Loads there about your emotional experience, how to deal with mental health issues, and how to find a more fulfilling way of life. So go check it out, like, share, subscribe, and let me know what you think.